All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into a place we don't often think about much.
Okay.
The circulatory and lymphatic systems.
Right.
That network of blood vessels and lymph nodes that keeps things moving all throughout our bodies.
Yeah, what's really interesting about these systems is that, unlike, let's say, your gut, they're designed to be totally sterile.
Oh, okay.
There's no bacteria just hanging out there, no viruses trying to catch a ride. It's like a super exclusive club, you know?
No swatters allowed.
Exactly.
But I guess that also means that when infections do happen in these areas, things can get pretty serious.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today. A whole lineup of bacteria, viruses, and even parasites that can really wreak havoc if they manage to break through those defenses.
Sounds like a pretty intense lineup.
It is, and what I find fascinating is how diverse these infections are, how they spread, their symptoms, the challenges in treating them. It's a real puzzle.
So many different ways to cause trouble.
Yeah.
It sounds like we've got a lot to unpack then. So let's start with those bacterial invaders.
Okay.
It seems like they usually need like an opening, to slip into the circulatory system.
Right.
Like a cut or something.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it this way. Cuts, surgical procedures, even those pesky insect bites can create these little breaches in our defenses, giving bacteria like a direct route into the bloodstream.
It's like opening a door right into our system.
Exactly. And once they're in, things can really escalate.
And is that when we start seeing some of those really serious infections like sepsis?
Absolutely. Imagine your body's whole immune system going into overdrive trying to fight off this infection. And in that process, it can unfortunately damage your own organs if it's not treated quickly and aggressively enough.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of another bacterial infection that historically was a major killer, especially for new mothers. Puerperal fever.
Puerperal fever. I've never even heard of that.
Well, thankfully, it's much less common now with modern hygiene practices in place, but it used to be a devastating infection that would often occur after childbirth.
Oh, wow.
Really highlights how far we've come in terms of medical practices, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It's incredible how much things have changed. But speaking of serious bacterial infections, the material also mentioned endocarditis and gas gangrene.
Yes.
And those sound pretty terrifying.
They can be. Endocarditis is an infection of the heart valves.
Oh, wow.
And it can be caused by bacteria that enter the bloodstream, often requiring surgery to fix.
And gas gangrene.
Well, that one is a rapidly spreading infection that can actually destroy tissues.
Oh, no.
It's caused by bacteria like Clostridium perfringens, which produce gas bubbles in the infected tissues.
So that's where it gets its name.
Exactly, hence the name.
That one definitely earns a spot on my list of nightmares.
I can imagine.
So we've got these infections that can, pop up after injuries or medical procedures.
Right.
But then there's this whole other category of threats, those zoonotic diseases that we can pick up from animals.
Exactly. These are the diseases that jump from animals to humans, often through bites or contact with infected animals.
Right.
Like tularemia, for instance, is spread by rabbits and other animals. And then there's brucellosis, which you can get from livestock or unpasteurized dairy products.
And of course, the infamous bubonic plague.
Oh.
Carried by fleas that live on rodents.
The Black Death itself.
It's hard to imagine something like that happening today.
Yeah.
But it's a, stark reminder that these zoonotic diseases are still out there.
Absolutely.
What I'm wondering, though, is how do doctors even tell all these bacterial infections apart?
That's a great question.
I mean, wouldn't a lot of them have pretty similar symptoms?
You're exactly right. Fever, chills, fatigue. These are all common symptoms of many infections.
Yeah.
So pinpointing the exact culprit can be really tricky, and that's where lab tests become absolutely crucial for identifying the specific bacteria that's causing the problem.
Makes sense.
It's like detective work, trying to piece together those clues.
So once they've identified the bacteria, then antibiotics are usually the go-to, right?
Typically, yes.
But I know there's this growing concern about antibiotic resistance.
Yeah, it's a major threat.
And that's when bacteria become resistant to the drugs that we use to kill them.
Right, and then treating those infections becomes much more difficult, sometimes even impossible.
So it's like a race against time to find new treatments then.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered the bacterial bad guys, but what about those viral infections of the circulatory and lymphatic systems?
Okay.
One thing that always throws me off is this concept of latency.
Right.
What is that all about?
Think of it like a dormant volcano.
Okay.
It's there, but it's not erupting. Yet certain viruses, particularly herpes viruses, can actually infect you and then just lie dormant in your cells for years, even decades, without causing any symptoms.
So they're like ticking time bombs, just waiting to go off.
Right.
That's kind of creepy.
It is a bit, yeah.
And I think the most common example of that is Epstein-Barr virus, which causes mono.
Precisely. Most people actually get infected with EBV at some point in their lives, but many never even realize it because they don't have any noticeable symptoms.
Oh, wow.
But for some people, it can trigger infectious mononucleosis, which is characterized by extreme fatigue, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes, and in some cases, EBV can even trigger the development of certain cancers.
Oh,
particularly lymphoma,
wow,
which affects the immune system.
So EBV is pretty widespread then, and it can be more serious than people realize.
Yeah, definitely more than people realize.
What about cytomegalovirus?
CMV.
Or CMV, yeah.
Well, CMV is interesting because it usually only causes problems in people with weakened immune systems or in babies who are infected before birth.
Okay.
For healthy individuals, it's usually not a big deal.
So it's one of those viruses you really have to be careful about if you're pregnant or if you're immunocompromised.
Right.
Okay, moving on from these stealthy herpes viruses, the source material also mentions this group of viruses known as arboviruses.
Yeah.
What makes them so unique?
Well, arboviruses are transmitted through the bite of infected arthropods.
Like mosquitoes and ticks.
Exactly. They often cause fevers and can damage blood vessels, leading to some pretty serious complications.
And some of these arboviral diseases are pretty well known, right? Like yellow fever, dengue fever, and chikungunya.
Yeah, those are some of the major culprits.
Okay.
Yellow fever is a hemorrhagic fever that can be fatal, but thankfully there's a vaccine to prevent it.
That's good.
Dengue and chikungunya, on the other hand, can cause really debilitating pain and joint swelling.
Oh, wow.
And there are currently no specific treatments for those.
That sounds absolutely visceral.
It can be, yeah.
And speaking of serious viral diseases, we can't overlook Ebola. It's highly contagious and often fatal, which makes it particularly frightening.
Ebola is definitely a major concern.
Yeah.
You know, outbreaks have really highlighted how critical strict infection control measures are. The virus spreads through contact with bodily fluids, and it causes a whole range of symptoms, including fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and internal bleeding.
That's a lot.
It is.
It's a reminder that these viruses can emerge and spread really quickly.
Absolutely.
And become a global threat.
Yes.
Okay. So we've covered quite a few viral infections now, from the stealthy to the deadly. But there's one more virus that we need to talk about that's had a massive impact on global health.
Yeah.
And that's HIV.
Absolutely.
HIV is the virus that causes AIDS, and it attacks the immune system.
Right.
Leaving the body vulnerable to all sorts of opportunistic infections and cancers.
Exactly.
Now, I know HIV is a complex virus, but in order to understand it, it's helpful to know about the stages of infection, right?
That's right.
Because the course of HIV infection typically progresses through 3 stages, with the final stage being AIDS, when the immune system is severely compromised.
That's correct.
And it's been a long journey of research and advancements in treatment for HIV.
It has.
What's the current outlook for people living with the virus?
Well, thankfully, with the development of antiretroviral therapy, or ART, people with HIV can now live long and healthy lives.
That's really good to hear.
It is. ART involves taking a combination of drugs that actually suppress the virus, preventing it from replicating and destroying those crucial immune cells.
Okay.
It's also highly effective in reducing the risk of HIV transmission.
So it's not just about treatment, it's about prevention too. It's
Exactly.
incredibly encouraging to hear.
It is.
It shows how far we've come in our understanding and management of this virus. All right, so we've explored a whole range of bacterial and viral infections,
We have.
but our deep dive wouldn't be complete without talking about the parasites
Right.
that can also target the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
You're absolutely right. And when it comes to parasitic infections of these systems, one disease really stands out as a major global health challenge. Malaria.
All right.
It's still a leading cause of death in many parts of the world, especially in tropical and subtropical regions.
Malaria is caused by a parasite called Plasmodium, and it spreads through the bite of infected mosquitoes, right?
That's correct.
It's truly a devastating disease.
It is.
The parasite infects red blood cells, leading to a range of symptoms including fever, chills, sweating, headache, muscle pain, fatigue, and in severe cases, it can cause organ damage, coma, and even death.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine the toll this disease takes on individuals and communities.
It is. It really is.
What are the main strategies for combating malaria?
Well, the key approaches involve preventing mosquito bites in the first place, using things like bed nets and insecticides, and then treating infected individuals with anti-malarial drugs.
Right.
However, drug resistance is a growing concern. And so researchers are constantly working to develop new and more effective treatments.
Yeah, it's a constant battle against this ancient foe.
It really is.
So we've covered the big one, malaria, but I'm guessing there are other maybe less well-known parasitic infections lurking out there as well.
Oh, you bet. And they can cause all sorts of problems.
Like what?
Well, for instance, there's toxoplasmosis,
Right.
parasitic infection that can be transmitted through contact with cat feces or contaminated food.
Yeah.
It's usually harmless in healthy individuals,
Okay.
but it can be dangerous for pregnant women and people with weakened immune systems.
Yeah, I've always heard about that one, especially the advice for pregnant women to avoid cleaning litter boxes.
Exactly. The parasite can actually cross the placenta and infect the fetus, potentially causing serious complications.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Good advice to heed.
Definitely.
Okay, what about babesiosis?
Babesiosis.
I've heard it described as a malaria-like illness,
Yeah.
but it's caused by a different parasite, right?
Yeah. That's right. Babesiosis is caused by a parasite called Babesia, and it's transmitted through tick bites.
Okay.
It often causes flu-like symptoms, but it can be more severe in people with weakened immune systems or those who've had their spleen removed.
So another tick-borne illness to be aware of.
It is. And then we have Chagas disease,
Okay.
which is a big problem in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
Chagas disease is a chronic parasitic infection caused by the protozoan Trypanosoma cruzi,
Wow.
and it's primarily found in Latin America.
Okay.
It spreads through the bite of kissing bugs.
Kissing bugs?
Yeah, they're blood-sucking insects.
Oh, wow.
And the scary thing about Chagas disease is that it can remain silent for years, even decades,
Right.
before causing serious damage to the heart and digestive system.
That sounds incredibly sneaky and dangerous.
It can be.
Early detection and treatment must be crucial then.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have leishmaniasis.
Yes. Another group of diseases caused by parasites of the genus Leishmania. These parasites are transmitted through the bite of sandflies, and they can cause a wide range of symptoms, from skin sores to more severe forms that affect internal organs.
So the severity really depends on the specific type of leishmaniasis then.
Exactly.
Are there any other parasitic infections that we should be aware of?
Well, one more to mention. Schistosomiasis.
Okay.
It's a parasitic infection caused by a type of flatworm called a schistosome.
A flatworm.
Yeah. These worms live in certain types of freshwater snails, and they can penetrate human skin when people come into contact with contaminated water.
So swimming or wading in contaminated water could be risky then.
It could be.
And what happens once these worms get into the body?
Well, they migrate through the bloodstream and eventually settle in various organs, causing chronic inflammation and damage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That does not sound pleasant at all.
It's not.
So we've covered a lot of ground here today, from bacteria to viruses to parasites.
It's been a lot.
It's amazing how many different pathogens can target the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
It really is.
It's a testament to the resilience of the human body that we can even withstand these attacks.
You're absolutely right. And you know, what I find so fascinating is how many of these pathogens we've talked about are opportunistic, meaning they really take advantage of weaknesses in our defenses, which just highlights how crucial hygiene is.
Right.
Prompt wound care, careful medical procedures, all those things are really important in preventing these infections in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's such an important takeaway.
It is.
It really puts things into perspective.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating
And sometimes unsettling.
Yes, sometimes unsettling world of infections that can affect the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We covered a lot of ground in part one,
We did.
exploring this whole rogues gallery of bacteria, viruses, and parasites.
All those troublemakers
Right.
that can cause problems in these, normally sterile environments.
Yeah, we talked about how these infections can arise,
Right.
how they spread, and some of the challenges in diagnosing and treating them.
Exactly.
And now, in part two, it's time to put your knowledge to the test
Yes.
with a little quiz.
A little pop quiz.
Yeah,
Think of this as a fun way to,
to see what's stuck.
to see what's stuck.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the challenge?
I'm ready. Bring on the questions.
All right, here's your first question. Which of the following diseases is transmitted by body lice? Is it A, tularemia, B, bubonic plague, C, murine typhus, or D, epidemic typhus?
This one is tricky.
It is a bit tricky.
I remember we talked about body lice being a vector for one of these diseases.
Right.
But I can't recall which one exactly. Is it D, epidemic typhus?
That's absolutely correct. Body lice are the primary vectors for epidemic typhus, a disease caused by the bacterium Rickettsia prowazekii.
Phew, I got that one. It's a good reminder that these tiny creatures,
Tiny but mighty,
can pack a powerful punch when it comes to spreading disease. And speaking of tiny but mighty pathogens,
Yes.
let's move on to our next question,
Okay.
which focuses on HIV.
Okay.
A patient at a clinic has tested positive for HIV. Her blood contains 700 or CD4 T cells, and she does not have any apparent illness. Her infection is in which stage? Is it A1, B2, or C3?
All right.
Okay, so I remember that HIV attacks the immune system,
Right.
and that CD4 T cells are important immune cells. And I also recall that there are 3 stages of HIV infection.
All right.
So if her CD4 T cell count is still relatively high,
Right.
and she's not showing any symptoms, I'm going to guess that she's in stage B2.
You nailed it again. Stage 2 of HIV infection is characterized by a gradual decline in CD4 T cell count, but the individual may not experience any symptoms or only mild ones. A CD4 T cell count of 700 falls within the range for stage 2.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that HIV can be silently damaging the immune system even before symptoms appear.
Exactly.
Here's why early detection and treatment are so crucial.
Absolutely crucial.
And that brings us to our final question for this round.
Right.
Are you ready for a real brain teaser?
I think so. Bring it on.
All right.
Okay, here it is. Which of the following diseases does not involve an arthropod vector? Is it A, schistosomiasis, B, malaria, C, Chagas disease, or D, babesiosis?
Okay, let's break this down.
All right.
We know that malaria, Chagas disease, and babesiosis are all spread by the bites of infected arthropods,
Right.
like mosquitoes or ticks. That's schistosomiasis. I remember that one was a bit different, wasn't it?
It was. Do you recall how schistosomiasis is transmitted?
I think it had something to do with water, right?
Yes.
Those parasitic worms that live in freshwater snails.
You've got an incredible memory. That's exactly right.
Okay.
Schistosomiasis is caused by parasitic worms that live in freshwater snails.
Right.
And they infect humans by penetrating the skin
Well-
when people come into contact with contaminated water.
So the answer is A,
Yes.
schistosomiasis.
Schistosomiasis. Correct. While malaria, Chagas disease, and babesiosis are all spread by the bites of infected arthropods, schistosomiasis is a waterborne parasitic infection.
Wow. 3 for 3. I guess all that deep diving really paid off.
You've been an amazing student. You've clearly been paying close attention to all the detail.
I've got to give credit where credit is due. You've been a fantastic teacher.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, you've explained these complex concepts in such a clear and engaging way.
Well, thank you. I really try to make learning about these fascinating and sometimes scary topics accessible and enjoyable for everyone.
Well, you've definitely succeeded.
Oh, good.
And you know what's really striking to me is just how diverse these infections are.
Right.
The different ways they spread, the variety of symptoms they cause, the unique challenges each one presents in terms of diagnosis and treatment.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. And that diversity really highlights the complexity of the interactions between humans, pathogens, and the environment.
Yeah, it's this constant reminder that our health is intricately connected to the world around us.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the world around us,
Yes.
there's one more important topic that we need to discuss before we wrap up this deep dive. The impact of climate change on the spread of infectious diseases.
That's a big one.
Right.
Climate change is a complex issue with far-reaching consequences. And one of those consequences is its potential impact on the spread of these infectious diseases.
Yeah, we briefly touched on this in part 2, talking about how climate change is altering the distribution and behavior of disease vectors like mosquitoes and ticks, those tiny creatures that can carry some pretty nasty pathogens.
Yeah, they're as temperatures rise
Yeah.
and weather patterns shift,
Yeah.
these vectors are actually able to expand their ranges,
Right.
potentially introducing diseases to new areas and new populations.
Right. So a disease that was once confined to a specific region could suddenly become a threat in areas where it's never been seen before.
Exactly.
That's a scary thought.
It is scary.
It's not just about the geographic spread of diseases.
Right.
Climate change can also influence the timing and intensity of outbreaks.
Exactly.
For example, warmer temperatures can create more favorable conditions for mosquitoes to breed,
Right.
leading to larger populations and a higher risk of mosquito-borne diseases.
Absolutely.
So we could see more cases of diseases like malaria, dengue fever, and Zika virus
Right.
in areas that are already affected, and potentially even in new areas that haven't had to deal with these diseases before.
It's possible, yeah.
And it's not just mosquitoes we need to worry about,
Yes.
which can carry Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses,
Yeah.
are also sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. As these factors shift, tick populations can boom,
Absolutely.
increasing the risk of human exposure.
Yeah.
It seems like climate change is throwing a wrench into this,
It's disrupting thing.
this delicate balance of our ecosystems,
Yeah.
creating this cascade of effects that ultimately impact human health.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected. Humans, animals, the environment.
We're all part of this web of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that interconnectedness underscores the need for a more holistic approach to addressing climate change
Yeah.
and its impact on infectious diseases.
We can't just focus on one aspect in isolation.
Right.
It's all connected.
We need to tackle the root causes of climate change, of course,
Absolutely.
but we also need to adapt to the changes that are already happening
Right.
and prepare for the challenges ahead.
Exactly.
So what can we do to protect ourselves and our communities in this changing world?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that, a lot of people are grappling with.
It can all feel a bit overwhelming.
It can, but there are definitely things we can do, both individually and collectively.
Like what?
Well, on an individual level, we can take steps to reduce our own carbon footprint, like, driving less, conserving energy, making more sustainable choices in our daily lives.
So those everyday actions can actually add up to make a real difference.
They do. They absolutely do. And beyond those individual efforts, we can also support policies and initiatives that promote renewable energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and invest in climate resilience.
So using our voices and our votes to advocate for a healthier planet.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in terms of protecting ourselves from these infectious diseases, the tried and true methods remain essential.
Right.
Practicing good hygiene, getting vaccinated, using insect repellents,
Okay.
and just being aware of the risks associated with travel and outdoor activities.
Being prepared, staying informed.
Exactly. It's all about staying informed, being prepared, taking those common sense precautions, and also supporting research and public health efforts to monitor disease trends, develop new treatments and vaccines, and implement effective control strategies.
Right. Because knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Absolutely.
The more we understand about these complex interactions, the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges ahead.
Well said.
I think that's a great message to end on. Knowledge is power.
It is.
And by taking this deep dive together, we've gained valuable knowledge about the threats posed by infections of the circulatory and lymphatic systems, and the importance of staying informed, proactive, and engaged in protecting our health and the health of our planet.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive into infections of the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
Okay.
Join us in part 3,
All right.
where we'll delve a bit deeper into this connection between climate change and infectious diseases, and explore what we can do to protect ourselves in this changing world. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into infections of the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Exploring this diverse world of pathogens that can target these crucial systems.
The challenges of diagnosis and treatment. And the importance of prevention.
Absolutely.
In this final part, we wanted to circle back to a topic that's become increasingly relevant to the spread of these infectious diseases.
Okay.
And that's climate change.
Yes, the elephant in the room.
Right.
Climate change is a complex issue with far-reaching consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those consequences is its potential impact on the spread of infectious diseases.
And we briefly touched on this in part 2.
We did.
Talking about how climate change is altering the distribution and behavior of disease vectors,
Right.
like mosquitoes and ticks.
Those tiny creatures that
yeah.
can carry some pretty nasty pathogens.
Yeah, as temperatures rise and weather patterns shift,
Mm-hmm.
these vectors are able to expand their ranges,
Right.
potentially introducing diseases to new areas and populations.
Exactly.
So a disease that was once confined to a specific region
Mm-hmm.
could suddenly become a threat in areas where it's never been seen before.
It's a scary thought.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It is.
And it's not just about the geographic spread of diseases.
Right.
Climate change can also influence the timing and intensity of outbreaks.
Exactly. For example, warmer temperatures can create more favorable conditions for mosquitoes to breed,
Maybe do.
larger populations,
Right.
and a higher risk of mosquito-borne diseases.
So we could see more cases of diseases like malaria, dengue fever, Zika virus,
Exactly.
areas that are already affected,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially even in new areas that haven't had to deal with these diseases before.
Absolutely. It's possible.
And it's not just mosquitoes we need to worry about.
No, not just mosquitoes.
Ticks, which can carry Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses,
Yeah.
are also sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. As these factors shift, tick populations can boom,
They can, absolutely.
increasing the risk of human exposure.
Exactly.
It seems like climate change is really throwing a wrench into,
It's disrupting things.
this delicate balance of our ecosystems,
Yeah.
creating this cascade of effects that ultimately impact human health.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
We are.
Humans, animals, the environment.
We're all part of this web of life.
Right, and that interconnectedness really underscores the need for a more holistic approach
It does.
to addressing climate change and its impact on these infectious diseases.
Absolutely. We can't just focus on one aspect in isolation. It's all connected.
Right, we need to tackle the root causes of climate change, of course.
Of course.
But we also need to adapt to the changes that are already happening
Right.
and prepare for the challenges ahead.
We do.
So what can we do to protect ourselves and our communities in this changing world?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that a lot of people are grappling with.
It can feel a bit overwhelming,
It can, yeah.
but there are things that we can do both individually and collectively.
Absolutely.
Like what?
Well, on an individual level,
Okay.
we can take steps to reduce our own carbon footprint,
Okay.
like driving less, conserving energy, making sustainable choices
Right.
in our everyday lives.
So those everyday actions can really add up to make a difference.
They can. They absolutely do.
And beyond those individual efforts,
Yes.
we can also support policies and initiatives that promote renewable energy,
Absolutely.
reduce greenhouse gas emissions, invest in climate resilience.
Exactly.
So using our voices and our votes to advocate for a healthier planet.
Exactly.
And in terms of protecting ourselves from these infectious diseases,
Right.
the tried and true methods are still essential.
They are.
Practicing good hygiene, getting vaccinated, using insect repellents, and being aware of the risks associated with travel and outdoor activities.
Absolutely.
So being prepared, staying informed,
It's all about staying informed, being prepared, taking those common sense precautions.
and also supporting research and public health efforts
Yes, very important.
to monitor disease trends,
Uh-huh.
develop new treatments and vaccines, and implement effective control strategies.
All essential.
Right, because knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, absolutely.
The more we understand about these complex interactions,
Mm-hmm.
the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges ahead.
Well said.
I think that's a great message to end on. Knowledge is power.
It is.
And by taking this deep dive together,
Mm-hmm.
we've gained valuable knowledge about the threats posed by infections of the circulatory and lymphatic systems,
Absolutely.
and the importance of staying informed, proactive, and engaged in protecting our health and the health of our planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive
Uh-huh.
into the often overlooked but incredibly important world of the circulatory and lymphatic systems.
I agree.
We've explored how these intricate networks keep our bodies functioning,
Right.
and we've delved into the diverse array of pathogens that can disrupt their delicate balance,
We have.
from bacteria and viruses to those fascinating and sometimes unsettling parasites.
Yes, they are fascinating, aren't they?
But as we've learned, knowledge is power, and by understanding these threats, we can take steps to protect ourselves and stay healthy.
Absolutely. And by working together,
Yeah.
we can create a healthier future for all.
So thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.